Good morning, everybody. You know me. I'm Sarah, the Real Simple Mama. I'm going to do a video this morning that's all about all of the different things to keep in mind when it starts getting hot where you are. And we're going to call this, when it's over 90 degrees, you'd better do these. Good morning, everybody. Happy June. Ironically, I'm out here to do this video about the heat. I don't know how well you can see. We've got storm clouds going through. It's only in the 70s right now. Like, I'm almost chilly out here with the breeze. So there's the irony in that. But I have notes here. I'm going to tell you all of the strategies just revamped for 2021 of the systems we have in place, the things to keep in mind, the things you need to do for your chickens when it's getting over 90 degrees. So to kind of help you remember, my little mantra or my little rhyme here is going to be, if it's over 90 degrees, you'd better do these. I'll be honest, sometimes I make sure I do all these things when it hits like 88 or so, but I mean, you get the point. So I'm in South Texas. I'm in zone 8. For those of you who follow the USDA. So we are in mid to late June here. We easily hit days that are almost in the 100s. We actually had a really rainy season this year, so we're not hitting triple digits too much yet, but I know it's coming. So the problem is with your chickens in general, and there are some details we'll go into. What's wrong, Cal? There are a lot of things that your chickens can tolerate when it comes to rain and when it comes to cold and snow and freezes. They have systems in place in their bodies that they have developed and evolved over the years to keep them warm and to keep them dry. Now, there are exceptions if you have silkies or frizzles or some other breeds that don't have these traditional waterproof feathers. But as a rule, your chickens can be out in the snow. They can handle a lot of other things as long as they've got a place where they can get out of the elements. The problem we're talking about is when it gets hot, chickens do not have as many strategies or as many things that they've evolved to stay cool. And as a chicken tender who's going on year 5, I'm going to walk around here because she's driving me crazy. The only 2 chickens I've ever lost who have passed away, it has both been, why are you following me? I don't want to hear you complaining. The only 2 that I've ever lost who have passed away, it was both heat related. The girls got too hot, either trying to lay eggs or sleeping up in the coop. And so out of respect and love for them, and the lesson that unfortunately I had to learn by them passing away, and out of respect for them, and of course because I love my girls, I have all of these things in place. So let's talk about some of this. If you've been on my channel for a while, it'll be kind of like a test for you. Like, see if you know the answer before I say it. So, how do you know if it's getting too hot for your chickens? There are a lot of different things that you can do to check. Of course, if you have any kind of thermometer or temperature gauge or anything that's in the coop or out in the chicken run to where you can know what the temperature is, that would be good. You can set up, depending on what phone you have or what apps you have, there are certainly reminders or alerts that you can have set up, like, hey, when the temperature gets above a certain threshold, I need you to let me know. Those are all things that you can do as well. I also want to say that there are 3 things you can do by watching your flock that will teach you, hey, their bodies are starting to get too hot. Now remember, for us humans, we can sweat and we have other things that are in place. Chickens don't have systems like that, so you have to help them when they get too hot. There are 3 things, and because I'm a teacher and I'm super cool, we're going to use alliteration. So the 3 things are, they're pale, they're panting, and we're going to talk about their pits. So don't laugh at me because this works and you will remember. The first, and Miss Muffet is kind of demonstrating it right now, even though it's not really hot, you notice her comb and wattles and around her ears on her face, they're not that bright, beautiful red. She looks pale. That's the first sign. Being pale. The second sign is that your chicken is panting. So if they're panting, you can't think, oh, they're panting, okay, they're going to cool down, they're fine. No, that is a warning sign and nothing more. The third, and this is if they're really, really hot, your chicken will look pale, they will be panting, and they will have their wings out away from their body like they're trying to air out their armpits. I know they don't have armpits, they have wing pits, I guess. But that's another thing that they're doing because literally they're so hot, they're like, ah. So they have their wings spread out and they're just like standing there in this awkward stance with their wings out because they're trying to get the body heat off of them. Those 3 signs mean that yes, definitely you need to do something. As a side note, don't judge me by the dirty pool. We clean it every day. I just haven't cleaned it yet, but I'm sure from your angle, you're like, geez, lady, come on. So those signs for your chickens, they're pale, they're panting, and they're trying to cool down their pits. Those are the 3 signs when you're like, okay, I need to go do something to help them now so that a chicken doesn't drop dead. And I'm sorry if that seems crude or harsh to you, but I'm trying to help that not happen to you because it's happened to me. So let's talk about what you can do. The first obvious duh thing is to have shade. If they're out in direct sun and they have no shade, that's bad. Shade and the breeze will cool them down significantly. It is so much cooler right here than it was out in my yard. These tarps, I love these tarps. I will put my affiliate link in the video description. These tarps are fabric. You can see that they will move with the breeze. They do allow, these allow either 5 or 10%. I have the blue one here and the green ones over there. They allow 5 or 10% of the light to come through. So obviously they're not going to block everything. But the thing I love most about them is because they're not solid plastic. The air and the breeze can get through, so you can see them moving. That means it doesn't get stuffy under here. And also the other thing I worried about is if it rains or if it were to snow, although I don't really know what that is, but if it was to rain or snow, it doesn't just sit up on top of there and weigh it down and make it rip. The water can drip through. So everything can still filter through, but this blocks 90% of the light. These are made really well. I like the stitching on them and the stainless steel rings, but I did pay full price. So I do get a small cut if you want to order something like that, but I did pay for it as well. So shade is the #1 thing, right girls? Yeah. You want to make sure that they always have a place where they can get out of the elements, whether that's the sun is too hot, it's raining too hard, it's windy, it's snowing really hard. They need to have a safe space where they can go and get out of the elements. So make sure you've got that set up. That feed bag that I have stapled around there, that's where their main feeder is. It's so in case we're getting windy rain that's blowing sideways, it doesn't get their food wet and mess it up. The next thing is your chickens always need access to fresh, clean water 24/7. You do not need to come pick up their food and their water at night. Just leave it out. Now, it's true that chickens sleep really deeply and they're not going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, Mom, I need a glass of water. Like, they don't do that. They sleep through the night. And I don't know why that's my chicken voice, but it is apparently in all my videos. But they do, like, as soon as they wake up, like the sun's starting to come up, they drink water. And them being without water, even on a regular day, I know you're jealous of my Dollar Tree flip-flops. Even on a regular day when it's not super hot, if they're without water for just a couple of hours, not only are they not going to be laying eggs for you that day because their body's going to start going into emergency shutdown mode, but you can kill your birds. They have to have clean water. Now, I've spoiled mine. They also have the swimming pool. We'll talk about that in a minute. They do use it for drinking, but they use it for something else. So I have 5-gallon food grade plastic buckets, and then I use those little chicken drinkers, but they have 5 gallons there. They have another 5 gallons in another spot, and then they have the pool. So 8 chickens have well over 10 gallons of water available to them. You need to clean out the little drinkers, make sure they're not moldy, mildewy, nasty, and gross. If you use stuff in the water like apple cider vinegar or electrolytes or things like that, I use those too occasionally, but only about 1/3 of the time, especially in the summer. Don't be obsessed with putting a whole bunch of junk in their water. They really just need good, clean water most of the time. So don't obsess about putting garlic in there and apple cider vinegar. And most of the time, they just need plain water. So shade, protection from the elements, and plenty of water. Let's talk about giving them ice and stuff like that. So the reason I have this pool, and you can go get a kiddie pool at like Walmart or Tractor Supply for like $10. The purpose of having the pool is not only for them to have access to more extra drinking water, but it's to get their feet cooled down. If you think of a chicken like a car, the fastest way to go through their entire system like a radiator is to get their feet wet. That's the only part of their skin, of their body, that is out touching the air. Everything else is covered in feathers. And if you've got regular chickens like I do, their feathers are waterproof. So you'd have to get them drenched before they actually really get wet on their skin. So start training your chickens, and I have videos for how to do this. Start training your chickens to stand in the water. They only need 1 inch of it, and they may poop in it. As you can see, their feet are dirty. They're going to drink it sometimes. I mean, they're kind of dorky, right? But if you can train them to just stand in the water, just and just stand there with their feet in the water, that is the other quickest way to cool them down, to get them to drink ice water and get them in the shade and out of the elements and get them to stand in water. Now, if it gets really bad and your chickens aren't doing that, I mean, literally grab them and dunk them, like not dunk them, like submerge them, but get their feet in the water and just make them stand there. And often with a lot of stuff, whether you're training your chickens to sleep in the roost bars or where you want them to lay eggs or whatever, if you can get 1 or 2 of your chickens to figure it out, the rest will follow. So get a couple of your alphas or your more intelligent chickens, get them to understand what the deal is, and then everybody else will figure it out. I am very grateful that my 3 newest hens that I acclimated to the flock less than a year ago, when it was autumn last year and then spring this year after the winter storm, I started training them to stand in the pool. So now that it's summer, all 8 of them on any given time will be standing there in the water, and they just chill. They just kind of stand there for a minute, and it makes a huge difference. And then a minute later, they hop out, their color is back, and they look like they've calmed and cooled down. So that's another great thing you can do. If you want to give your chickens ice, you certainly can. You don't really have to worry about shocking their system with it being super cold. But again, you need to make sure that they are trained. Look at this lazy chicken. This is Carmen Hen Diego. You need to make sure that you have trained them to know how to drink out of the feeders and the waterers. And so they already have that system in place. In other words, if my chickens had never seen this pool before and I just dump ice in, it's not going to do anything because they don't know what to do with it. Does that make sense? Train them to use the thing first and then give them ice. But we freeze ice bottles. So these are upcycled bottles, everything from smoothies to protein shakes to waters to, Whataburger cups or whatever. You fill them mostly full with water, put them in your deep freezer, and we bring out 5 of those a day. And I have 15 or 20 of them, and that way I'm always rotating ones on different days. But I put water in here, or the ice bottles, I put ice bottles in here, I put ice bottles in here, I put them in this 5-gallon bucket and the other 5-gallon bucket on the outside, and every day we switch them out. That is one thing that you have to, it's work that you have to do in order to keep your chickens cool. Now we'll talk in a minute about the systems that I have in place that are just automated and done. But so far, remember, we've talked about shade, protection from the elements. We've talked about plenty of clean drinking water. It's got to be always available and it's got to be clean. And then getting their feet wet. And now we've talked about ice. A couple of things I want to mention before I go into the last little segment of the video. If you want to give them treats, I know a lot of people make all kinds of, we give them frozen corn and frozen peas and all of this other stuff. It's not a bad idea, but I do want to give you a couple of cautions, because some of the things that people give to their chickens in the summer, they think it's helping, and the chickens don't know any better, so they're going to eat it, but it actually ends up being a hindrance. Case in point, you can freeze, if your strawberries are getting kind of overripe, or your strawberry tops, or man, I bought too many tomatoes, I'm not going to use them, something like that. Watermelon pieces or watermelon rinds, all that kinds of stuff, you can put it in the fridge or you can freeze it for them. But there are a couple of foods that seem like they would be healthy, but it can be kind of a problem. So I will say, for example, we don't hardly ever give our chickens any kind of corn or any kind of peas. And the reason is that those vegetables, and if you are diabetic or hypoglycemic, you probably avoid those kinds of things anyway, because they are so high in sugar. It is a very high sugar vegetable. It's kind of the same thing as potatoes. It's kind of a vegetable, but really it's just a starch. So even though it has the name that it's a vegetable, it's not really as healthy. Because it's so high in sugar, unfortunately, it will make their body temperature go up. So people feed, this is a tangent, but just to teach you, people feed scratch or dried corn, cracked corn to their hens in the winter because it makes that little furnace heat up really quickly. So that means you don't want to feed that kind of stuff to them in the summer, even if it's frozen. So I personally never give them frozen corn or frozen peas, because yes, it's frozen, but them actually breaking down what that food is, it's going to make their body temperature go up. So keep that in mind. Right, girls? Even in the summer, you do want to make sure they always have access to their normal layer feed. Keep that in mind. They always need to have their regular food. You can add a little bit of frozen food or treats or whatever, but the other thing is, don't give them high protein treats like black sunflower seeds, grub terra, any of that kind of stuff. Try not to feed them in the afternoon, because again, them breaking down and processing a lot of that stuff actually makes their body temperature go up a little bit. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about the systems that I have in place that's sort of like a one and done treatment. You put this, you set it up, you do it, you program it, you automate it, and now it's done. The obvious things are the tarps. I set these up and they will stay up at least through the end of the summer. We may just keep them up indefinitely because they're kind of neat. But you hang up the tarp with some good outdoor string, and then they will be helping your chickens every single day. I love, if you want to see my videos on peat moss or are on mulch, those are 2 materials you can put on the ground. They stay really nice and cool. They're good for the chickens' feet. They can dust bathe in them. They can lay in them and be lazy. And you can spray it down really briefly with water, and that makes a huge difference in the temperature on the ground. So peat moss and mulch. Again, that's one thing. You dump some bags in your chicken run. It'll last all season. Another thing that's in my shot constantly is a mister. I did a video a few years ago about why I think you should have a mister, but the purpose of a mister for a chicken run is not for it to be running and running and running constantly. Mine is on a timer. It runs 5 minutes once an hour on the peak afternoon hours. So it's running just long enough to get that mulch wet, to get the ground wet. Honestly, when it turns on, the chickens run out of the area because they don't like it, you know, spraying them. But as soon as that thing shuts off, they all come running back over there and they start digging. Bugs will come out. Look how shady it is right now. And then the ground is wet and it's just really, really nice. So there are some things where it's like you either buy it once or you set it up once and you're good for the season. This kiddie pool, it is a step 2 pool. You can order any kind of pool like that. Like I said, these little pools are only about 10 bucks. You can put bricks or stones in it also, which the concrete will absorb the water up through, and the chickens don't even have to stand in the water. They can stand on the rock. They can play queen of the rock, and it's really cute. The other thing I wanted to talk about is our solar fan build, which actually is not a solar fan build anymore. But the windows of this coop, we have these fans running. You can have them set to run on a timer or when they go through a certain temperature threshold. Because it is so hot and we didn't want the system to maybe fail, we've actually hardwired these fans. There's one here and one on the other side. You can see through it right there. But we have these fans running 24/7. Remember that a fan technically does not lower the temperature, right? This isn't an air conditioner. It's just an agitator. It's moving air. But if you think about where they're placed, hot air, let's talk science, boys and girls, hot air rises, correct? So since the fans are up here, it's sucking out the hottest air in there. And the other thing is ammonia breakdown from the chickens pooping in here at night is also bad for them. So we want to get that, any kind of fumes or anything out of there as well. But a lot of these things, if you can set it up once and do it once, it really is not a lot of work for you every day to keep your chickens alive. I know some people have asked, like, you know, is it hard for you to have chickens in South Texas? And I mean, it can be, but if you're smart, if your chicken run and your coop are in a smart place and you have these things set up, your chickens can make it through the summer. I mean, obviously I've got girls who are almost 5 years old, and they are almost 5 years old because we put these things in place. And I am determined for them to have a really good life and to not lose a chicken to the heat ever again. So that's a whole bunch of information. I know it was a lot. Again, you can see these affiliate links in the video description so you can see what we bought and why we like it. But that's pretty much every idea that I can think of for what to do if it's over 90 degrees. So avoid giving them sugar. You can get their feet cool, get them ice, and remember the 3 Ps. You're looking for them being pale, for them panting, or for them to be airing out their wing pits. So I hope this was helpful. Give me all your ideas and suggestions down in the comments. Thanks.